Hi and welcome to episode number 10 of the Biz Live. And I know that because we've got our ceramic mugs. A very big welcome to all of you who are tuning in live at the moment through either our principal platform, which is LinkedIn, and the new platform LinkedIn Live. If you are tuning in live, please do leave a comment below. Our guest today is Graham Ash, but more about him. We'll be bringing him into the studio in just a few minutes' time. And a huge thank you to our sponsor. Once again, all of this season is sponsored by Professional Apprenticeships. A little bit more about them later on. We have some themes, we have some talking points, and you are watching the Biz Live. Okay, hello, Sarah Brooks. This is the show's co-host and co-producer. She has many years experience in broadcast television, has been working with me running the Evo network and large business expos for many years as well. And this show is brought to you by the aforementioned Evo Business Networking. Again, a little bit more about that in a moment. So hello there, Sarah. Tell us a bit about today's theme, and then we'll talk about the talking point as well. And if you are watching, please, very important that you introduce yourself into the chat. We'd like to know who you are, and also would like to inform other people where you are tuning in from, to use old parlance, and also let us know what you do as well. Okay, over to you, Sarah.
Good morning, Jamie. Yes, so our guest today, Graham Ash, has worked in many different businesses. So we thought it would be good to look at the question of leadership, but from the perspective of what is it like to work in a big company versus a small company, because he's had lots of experience of both. So what are the competencies? What is the different style of leadership that you need to flourish in a large organization, a large business, versus a small business where you tend to be not only the leader, but the sort of chief doer of that business as well. So it would be interesting to sort of dive into all of that with him, as well as many other things with him as well.
And tell us about the talking point for those who are coming in. I can see you coming in thick and fast. If you are joining us now, please introduce yourself into the chat. Tell us what you do. And don't forget, it's a chance to network as well. So please connect with other people who are commenting in the live feed. Also, we're simulcasting to YouTube, and also we're trying out Facebook Live as well. But our principal platform and our loyalty is to LinkedIn. And a big thank you to Alana and the team at LinkedIn Live in New York, in Dublin, and elsewhere around the world, in India, for helping us make this happen and accrediting us on this show. Okay, so tell us about the talking point, Sarah.
So we thought it would be interesting to look at this, again, sticking with the theme of large and small. If you could be in any business, large or small, what would that business be? And what would your ideal job title be in that business? Hopefully there are people who are doing exactly what they want who are listening to this today. But just fantasize for a minute. Think of your ideal job title and let us know what that is. What would you really, really love to be doing right now and have that job title on the door to your office? What would that job title be? Like it.
That's great. Okay, so we've got next week's show, which we're starting from last week onwards, to sort of tease, as it were. Next week, not to steal Graham's thunder, because I believe they know each other as well, we are lucky enough to welcome a business leader with bells on, very much like Graham. We have Ian Wortman, who is the managing director of Barclays Business here in the UK. He's the MD for all of the SME network, has many employees and team members, I should add, who are reporting up to him, helping businesses survive and thrive. And of course, they are our bank as well for a couple of businesses. So we're really lucky to be able to welcome Ian Wortman, a leader of leaders, and he will be joining us next week on the Biz Live. So we will put up the details for you to register if you want to take part. Best way is to actually connect with me on LinkedIn, then you'll get a notification usually. So that's next week's show. We'll be mentioning it again. You are watching the Biz Live. Our guest today is Graham Ash. He is the former managing director of Clarks, the international British brand, of course, UK and Europe. He's doing some really cool things at the moment. And prior to that, was a director at Tesco's and so much more. But we will be asking him in a few moments' time. So thank you very much indeed, Sarah. Sarah will be answering and fishing out some of your questions. If you've got questions for the team, Sarah, or indeed for Graham, please pop them into the chat. See you in a little bit, Sarah. Thank you very much indeed for co-hosting and co-producing. That's great. See you in a little bit. Great. So as I mentioned, Evo Networking is the company behind the Biz Live. We have 9 groups, opening up 10 very soon. More about that in a second. They're spread out around the southwest of England and also in Wales. On the 16th of February, we're opening a new group for Wales. It's called Evo Drake. It's free to attend for your first meeting, and it's a membership-based pay-for networking group ultimately. So if you'd like more information about Evo, Business Networking Limited, then go to the website. It's evo-networking.com. and book yourself, choose one of the meetings, an area near you from North Somerset to Bath, from Wiltshire to Wales. Choose your location, book yourself in, and we will welcome you, hopefully, at a meeting next week. We also have a new business called Evo Ultra, which Ian knows about, and certainly Graham does as well. This is a new company. It's aimed at principals, owner managers, owner founders, CEOs, C-suite, that buzzword at the moment, leaders in some of the larger companies. And we are running a peer group mastermind that starts on the 17th of March. If there's any CEOs of large companies tuning in or watching on our legacy or indeed on the restream on LinkedIn, then do get in contact. Technically, it's invite only, but you never know. We won't turn our nose up anybody who's interested. We'll send you a prospectus. And very much like I said with Ian, we have a leader of leaders running this new peer group. It meets monthly and it's led by General Sir Peter Ward. He's a 4-star general. He's the CEO of Amicus, a director of the global Titan General Dynamics, and runs an amazing charity as well, which we will be supporting, called Combat Stress. He's also the former head of the British Army as well. Forgot to mention that. Small little detail. Not. So if you'd like to find out more, then get in contact with Sarah in the chat. So if you're watching now, please introduce yourself. You are watching the Biz Live. My name is Jamie Breeze. I'm your host, and we're going to welcome Graham Ash in a few seconds' time. Cheers. Hello there, Graham Ash. Welcome to the studio.
Yeah, welcome to my workshop. My wife's actually, but good morning.
Now I know a little bit about you because you've been a member of our, of course, your most incredible achievement is being a member of our Evo network. But I'm very proud to say that you've been a member since pretty much since we started, and we've had a chance to get to know each other a little bit, network, as they say. But you've also spoken to a number of the groups, and that was one of the key reasons why I asked you onto the show today with Sarah to share that wisdom. Because, you know, when you've got 20 or 30 people in a networking Zoom call, that's great. Everyone benefits. They can ask questions. But it's much better for us, I think, now with this gift from LinkedIn. I think, I won't say who, but somebody at LinkedIn said we've been given a golden ticket. That was a few months ago they said that. So we can stream effectively to the world, or it's certainly a subset of our connections. So first and foremost, thank you so much, Graham, for coming on today. We know you're doing some cool stuff in retail and manufacturing at the moment, but I would like to talk a little bit about your past, present, and then we'll deal with the future. Then, of course, if you have got a question for Graham, please do ask Sarah. She will be both inviting you to introduce yourself into the chat, but also if you've got a question, please do pop that up. And also remember what our talking point as well. So there it is. If you could be involved in any business, large or small, what would be your ideal job title? What would that be? Let us know in the chat. And Graham, just before we get started, I want to do a little shout out to a few of our viewers, if that's the right parlance. We've got Paul Harris there saying good morning all. Kerry Collier, I know, registered this morning. Big welcome to Kerry. And once again, we welcome Sir Ashley Fox. A very good morning to you. And Paul Burden, a peak performance coach doing so much more. Ian Porter is joining us. I know that you've tuned in several times before, so a very good morning and also great to see you. Big shout out to Lisa Parkinson. I think it's your first time watching the show, and Mark White et al. Okay, so we're going to go. Oh, hello, Omar. I think that's the first time you're watching us as well. So a very big welcome to Omar there, tuning in from, I'm not sure where, so let us know where you're tuning in from, as it were. Okay, Graham, back to the show. So you are, I think I've got to know you best as being somebody who's been a leader in both retail, and that was food and beverages, but also in the rag trade. And we'll come to Clark's and Tesco's in a bit. What was your sort of early business experience? Did you go through the school and university route? I know that we both went to the same tertiary college.
We did, yeah.
And we should add, not it was in Harrow, but it wasn't that
not
posh
at the same time.
not at the same time, and also not the one where you wear the hats and the the fully
Yes,
shirt.
no, we went to the one at the bottom of the hill, not the top. Yes,
We did. We didn't know each other then, but I absolutely loved my time at Green Hill. I know it was called something then, but how funny that any place in the world, or say the UK, we both could have done our tertiary education, as it were, in the same college for a couple of years. So take us a bit back to your early sort of business encounters, and then we'll move on to the giddy heights of being the MD of one of the world's biggest brands.
Yeah. So I started as a Saturday boy in a greengrocer's. That was my first passion of retail, and it was in the days of no tills. It was mental arithmetic, add it up as you went along. So yeah, that was my early, and that was my, I guess, my passion, and that's where I went. I want to go into retail. My other alternative was to be a PE teacher, but I didn't want to go to university, so that was off the cards. I flunked my A levels. I had a pretty bad experience at a different college, and my parents said, you can leave and give it up, but you've got to go and get a job that allows you to grow. So I started as a management trainee in John Lewis with the day release, and that's hence the Harrow College of Technology, as it was. And I've grown up through the ranks. I've just progressed through a retail career, starting right at the bottom, and progressed up to some very, I won't say dizzy heights. I've been very fortunate. I've been very lucky. I've had some really good roles. I've worked in some great businesses. And I guess in that sort of theme of leadership, I've learned from some really good people. What I've hopefully done is taken good things from everyone and blended my own style. And having worked in large corporates and much smaller businesses, recognizing one style doesn't fit all. There are different techniques to use in different ways of engagement, different roles. In a large corporate, there's a lot around delegation and using your team. In that smaller business, it's much more hands-on. So yes, and my career has spanned some 30 odd years now, working predominantly in the rag trade. I'm now in manufacturing. Working for a business called Pneumatic International, who make Henry vacuums and other industrial equipment. But I guess if I was a stick of rock and you cut me through the middle, it says retailer, and that's my passion. And my passion is retail, but my passion is customers. I've attended some workshops, and I have an acetate in my garage. From an overhead projector, for those of you who can remember those. And it says in the middle, think like a customer. And in lots of bubbles around the outside are lots of questions around who is the customer, what do they want from you, what's the value equation, how do they want to shop. And those questions are absolutely relevant today as they were in 1998 when that was written. The difference today is the answers are very different. The world of a customer has changed. And it's about resilience, it's about adapting, and it's about becoming relevant.
I was surprised, having known you for just over a year actually this month. I had no idea that you also started off in a greengrocer's. It's uncanny, Graham. I started off in a greengrocer's. I started washing cars when I was a schoolboy, putting little flyers underneath the car windscreens, but then someone noticed my talent as a washing cars and offered me a job in the greengrocer's. That's not a word of a lie. That's incredible. You went to the same college as me in Harrow, not the school. I'm proud to say. Nothing against them profs, but it's a fee-paying school, and this was free education, which we like. But also that I started off, that was my first sort of proper job, and I also remember the challenges there of trying to add up. I wouldn't not be too self-effacing, but I'm not particularly gifted in the numbers department. I'm more creative and sort of wordy and that sort of thing. But I remember having to be literally there was no way of adding up. We had to do it in our heads, and it was a real challenge. I remember it was a Saturday boy, and I was sent off to go and get the lunches from Mackie D's and stuff, and it was really good fun. And I think I was 10 or 11 or 12 or something like that. So extraordinary that you started off in the same job as me. That's unbelievable. Anyway, so I digress. So Graham, I wanted to in about 15 minutes time, we're going to reach into the comments and bring in some of the questions. I know Sarah's hard at work there. Sarah, you're hard at work there checking questions. You're on camera. Excellent. What's up? In a bit. All right. Just joking. She's also my mate as well. We believe it or not, used to be my boss many years ago. Now I'm her boss, and I love it. Okay, so Graham, we're talking about youngsters quite a bit today, and I just wanted, for the first time in 10 episodes, to give a shout out to our sponsor, Professional Apprenticeships. They're 5 years old in April this year, and they were formed by two founders, Adam Rook and Karina Bush, and they both have extreme experience in the education sector and have grown the company from 2 people to take on their 14th member in March. So a big congratulations. I've known them ever since they started. In fact, they used to exhibit, I think, when they started at my business expo in Bristol in the United Kingdom. So it's really good that you've got behind us, and sponsoring the show is it is really showing support to the business community, the SMEs, but also to ourselves as well. It really helps us along the way with our bottom line. So thank you very much indeed for helping to make the show possible. And of course, having talked about youngsters and young jobs, Graham, can I jump back to you and ask you about what was your sort of first job outside of John Lewis in a leadership role? I know that you're doing some really cool things with the royal family. Is that right?
Yeah, I did a project in the around 2000-ish. I worked for a lady by the name of Marie Chantal. Marie Chantal's official title is Her Royal Highness the Crown Princess of Greece. She married the Crown Prince of Greece. She's also famous because her father is a gentleman by the name of Robert Miller, who is a Brit living in America, who set up duty-free shops in Asia Pacific and is a multi-billionaire. So a very, very different style. It was a bit of a plaything for Marie Chantal, but I guess in a role, you sort of think under the theme of leadership. I was sitting in there watching a business bleed money, and having to sit the owner down and go, "You're losing about £1 million a year." You have to find an emotive that actually brings that home. And what was really important to her was her family. So actually, if you pitch it around, what you're effectively doing is losing £1 million a year out of your child's inheritance, all of a sudden she sits up and listens. But it culturally was very different. It is a very, very different world, the world of luxury to the world that I was used to. Marie Chantal didn't really live in the real world, didn't understand when we put a proposal together to reward her staff not with a salary increase, but pay for a London travel card. She had no idea what they were, what they are, what they were about. So what you find is, I think, it's fair to say there are different emotives and different trigger points for different people, whether that's their background, whether that's their skill set, whether that's their knowledge, whether that's their role. And that leadership is about finding the trigger point and what really works well for that individual or that business. The culture of the business comes into play, but generally that individual is the trigger point. And my approach has always been to be, how would I want to be treated? How would I want to be spoken to? What are the things that are going to engage me, trigger me? And I learned something many years ago at Tesco's. Tesco's always used to talk to the executive team on the basis you had an audience of 2. The audience was Terry Leahy, who was then the chief executive, and the other person in the audience was a lady or a person who was on the checkout who did part-time hours. And if you could put your communication in a language that they both understood and they both engage with, you've done a great job.
Wow. You were a director of Tesco's. Am I right in saying, I think we might have touched on this before, I think you had a really cool job. It's something to do with confectionery. Were you head of category or something? Is that right?
No, I was category director for clothing.
For clothing? Where did I get the confectionery thing from?
No. So I think, so my role when I went into Tesco's was to take a very an off the radar business and grow it. So it grew from 180 million to nearly £500 million in a 3-year period. Just by, it wasn't clever. It was using that acetate. It was think like a customer. What do they want from you? What are their trigger points? What things do you do first? And when I joined, everyone was trying to do everything, and we went, actually, what we're doing really well on is kids. So let's get kids right. Then do women's, and don't worry about men because they don't really go in supermarkets, but we'll add them on later. And it was some very sort of simple messages like that. And it's about clarity. It's about having confidence in what you do and how you do it. I guess it leads me, and I want to jump around, but thinking about the question about job title. I've never been motivated by my job title. I've never applied for a job or been given a job based on what the title is. My ideal title would be shaper and developer, because that's what I do. Whether it's a team of people, whether it's a business, whether it's a function, whether it's brand new, whether it's one that needs reshaping, it's about having that ability to go in, listen, talk to people, understand. Because I remember talking to a boss in one of my businesses. I work for Adam's Kids, and he said to me, "You've got all the skills, but remember, you're not the knight on the shine. You're not the shining knight on the white charger." He said, "Come in and understand, because you've got all the ability, and it's about therefore coming in and going, I'm not a bull in a china shop. If you listen and engage people, and you bring them along with you, you've got a far greater opportunity to succeed."
Okay. It's a lifetime of experience, and what you're doing. Well, look, let's come to pneumatic in a moment, because that to me is equally interesting, especially during the COVID crisis. And look, do remember, if you are tuning in live, please do pop some questions into the chat, because Sarah is going through them now. We're going to bring them up in about 8 minutes time. We're going to ask them to Graham. Trust me, I've met some really, really cool, insightful, and inspiring leaders. Graham is all of those things, but he also just tells it as it is. It's no nonsense business advice from the front line of both the rag trade, retail, and of course what he's doing now in manufacturing, and doing much in the COVID crisis as well. So we'll come to that in a second. Graham, I want to talk to you a bit about your time, which I know was more recently, as the managing director of Clark's UK and Europe. If you're watching on one of our legacy channels, Clark's, if you don't have Clark's as a brand, I'll be surprised. How many countries around the world were you in, Graham?
Clark's is pretty much in every country around the world. Its claim to fame, which not many people will know, it is the biggest brown shoe company in the world. The reason we use brown shoe is it's not a sports brand. There are bigger sports brands, but it's the biggest brown shoe company in the world.
Good heavens, that's and what sort of to give us an idea of the size of the business without going into company accounts, what sort of turnover would the company do round about the time you joined it? Or
the company in total was around a 3 billion a year business. The UK and Europe was best part of 900 million. And those are retail and so they're all sales. They're online, wholesale, and retail.
I remember that you had quite a role in sort of shaping the online offering. So tell us a bit about that. You joined the company a few years ago, and I know you left about a year and a half ago. So tell us about the online offering and how you were able to implement the sort of technology into a traditional business.
Yeah, so I think you'll hear lots of people talk about multi-channel and omni-channel. And what we did at Clark's was just think about, what does the customer of the future look like, and how do we want to have a fully integrated experience? So no matter how you touch the brand or where you started the brand, you had a seamless journey right the way through. So I buy online, I pick up in a store, I return via post. I buy in a store, I return to the store, I purchase on store, have it shipped to my home. All of those things were part of the experience. Our technology, I'm not the digital expert from an IT point of view, but our engine didn't work. So we replaced the engine. And as we replaced the engine, we said, well, what do we want the body to look like? What are the gizmos we want to work on there? How do we want to engage with people? So Clark's had a huge database. And was very good at sending out lots of emails, of which probably 20% were relevant to you. So there was a lot more around how do we have an effective CRM? How do we bespoke our communications to those customers? So it's back to that thinking like a customer. If I'm a female with young children, I do want to hear about offers for young children and when school comes along, and what are the new product launches. There is a level of communication which is acceptable, and particularly if you've got offers and things like that. But I don't want to hear about things that are not relevant to me, and we were very poor at doing that. So there was a lot around how do we make a better, more effective CRM policy. How do we start to make more effective use of our stores? Clark's had, like a lot of retailers, expanded into lots of retail space, 600 stores around the UK, most of which were on massively long leases. The cost of getting out was hideous, so it was stuck with them. So it was, how do I make better use of that space? Can I make the store a collection point and less of a store, so my stock investment isn't as much? It just opens up a whole new sort of avenue of thinking. And you now got Boohoo buying Debenhams, and thinking, well, why? I don't know the answer to that at the moment. I can't. There is a straightforward one, which is they bought the database. But the Debenhams customer tends to be 30 to 50. The Boohoo customer's a teenager. So there is no synergy there. So the ASOS top man makes more sense. But it was really around the whole replatforming of a website to make it ready for the 21st century. We had lots of technical scenarios which stopped us doing particular activity. We couldn't have multiple prices in different countries. We had to have the same price all across Europe. It didn't work. So there was some the digital piece was some inside ways of working, but very much around customer facing, because it was about making sure the journey and the customer experience was at the forefront of everything we did.
You've recently, in the last year, taken on a senior role at Pneumatic. So for those of you who don't know, Pneumatic makes Henry the vacuum cleaner. We don't say the word beginning with H because that's another brand, isn't it? I mean, is Pneumatic? I mean, I see them in almost every commercial scenario. Is Henry the biggest selling vacuum? I mean, I know obviously I've had the pleasure of meeting James Dyson a good few times, and but that he's a relatively new player in the market, isn't he? Is that right?
Yeah, no, I mean, Pneumatic isn't the biggest, but it's potentially one of the oldest, because it's privately owned. The owner is in his mid-80s. He is an engineer in the same way as James Dyson was. Mr. Duncan is his name. He likes to tinker about with machines. He's not really interested in where they're sold and how they're sold. He doesn't that's not what interests him. But he's very interested in supporting the Southwest. The business is based in Chard in Somerset, employs best part of 1,000 people. And he's very concerned about maintaining that presence in and around there. Manufacturing is all made, the majority of the machines and the parts for the machines are manufactured on site. We buy in certain things, but very little. We grind up old machines, pulp them, and produce our own plastics. It is a retail business and a commercial business. It has a retail offer, which is Henry, primarily Hetty and friends, which you see in most homes somewhere. Most of them are in the in a garage, and they're used for that. And it has a huge commercial arm. And it's interesting because it is a brand, and Henry's the brand, which everyone will recognise. Commercially, Pneumatic's the brand, because it tends to go into the mighties of the world and facility management companies, and airports and such like, with ride-on scrubber dryers, floor machinery, and inherently it's a manufacturer, so everything it does is through the eyes of manufacturing efficiency. And my role is very much to take it around customer facing and going, actually, if you are selling now, whether you're selling directly to consumers through a website, whether you're selling Henry's through John Lewis, Curry's, Argos, or whether you're selling into commercial companies. So we've just done a deal with Birmingham City Council. We're talking to lots of NHS trusts about providing all of their equipment. They are customers, they have customer needs. If you put yourself in their shoes and you think about how you can position the offer that you think is best suiting to them, and it's very much around the role, and it's, you know, my I guess my description earlier about the role of retail's changed. It's still about customers. The role of a salesman's changed, I think. It's not about, you know, I've got a bag of samples, I'm here to sell you. It's I'm here to understand what you want, what you need, and how I can help you, and that's what I can then sell you and satisfy you with.
So much. It's just a lifetime of experience. I think what I'm going to do, Graham, is I'm going to bring Sarah in about 3 or 4 minutes' time. And we've got some questions. So if you have got a question for Graham, please do pop it into the chat now. You've got a great opportunity to ask somebody who's been at the forefront of international business. Graham, what I'm going to do in a few moments' time is ask you for a few tips, if that's okay, about, I think we need to address the dreaded crisis at the moment. We're in a third lockdown. And I would like to talk to you just a little bit for a few minutes about resilience. And I know it sounds a bit corny, but a few top tips to those business leaders who are watching, of which I know there are a few at the moment, and also those who are starting out in business, and maybe some of the apprentices, or would-be team members for companies which are now emerging, in this post-COVID crisis. So, if that's okay, I'd like to ask you for a few tips. But in the meantime, you are watching the Biz Live. My name's Jamie Breeze, the co-host is Sarah Brooks. This is Graham Ash. It's sponsored by Professional Apprenticeships. I think I need 1 or 2 more coffees. And you are watching the Biz Live, and it's streaming live now on LinkedIn Live. See you in a few seconds' time. Okay, Graham, so we're talking a bit about some of the tips you could offer to businesses, all shapes and sizes, the theme for today, about getting through this third lockdown and what your view is on the future. Could you offer some advice for us, please?
Yeah, I think, most businesses will have some type of strategy or plan, whether that's an action plan, whether it's a strategic plan. Don't ever think it's fixed in tablets of stone. It's not. It needs to be flexible. You need to be adaptable. You'll get some things right, you'll get some things wrong. You need to learn from them. So adaptability is key. Learning is absolutely key. Stop, road check how you're doing, what's working, what's not working. And the other part, I think, from a leadership point of view, is that constant engagement with people in however you think the right way to do that, and bringing them on board, listening, understanding, checking in, making sure people's understanding's right, making sure they're executing things in the way you expected them to. And there is there's a whole piece around everyone's adapted to working from home. I think we all enjoyed's probably not the right word. We adapted to it, but in the first one, I think people are struggling much more this time round. I'm enjoying it a lot less, I've got to say. If you could put me back in the office tomorrow, I'd be there at a drop of a hat. I think that interaction with people's really, really key, and I think just listening and talking to people, that hands-on isn't quite the same at the moment. I think people are definitely missing for that. And I think you've got to, in that point, there is that. And if I'm starting out, I think there's something which says, don't give up. You started out with a good idea. It isn't a bad idea. It's just got some different challenges, and you have to think about how you respond to those challenges. And doing nothing is not a good option. Doing something is absolutely the right thing to do. And don't put off today what needs to be done. If there are decisions to be made, no matter how tough, I came back in the new year expecting to sort of hit the new year ground running, and the first thing I did in week one was put a group of people who are based out in the field on furlough because there is no work for them. That's tough, but they understand why, because I rang every single one of them myself. I didn't leave it to anyone else, and I spoke to them and explained why, what was happening, what it meant. I explained to them why I'd selected 2 people to remain working and others not to, because there was enough job for work for 2. The 2 people I kept on were the newest ones. So, the guys were going, well, hold on a minute, why is that? And I went, because they started after October, and as a result, they weren't entitled to furlough. So if I put them on furlough, they'd earn nothing. So, the team, the guys went, oh, that's great. I don't like the fact I'm not earning full pay, but I like the fact that you've made sure everyone's been looked after. Because, I'm asking them to do things. I'm asking them, I could, if I guess for effect or in reality, I'm asking them to put their lives on the line, because they are going into other people's premises every day to do a job. And if I'm going to ask them to do that, I want to make sure that they know that they're supported and recognised. That's about that leadership. I think it's about, how would you want to be treated? What type of messages you want, and even if it's bad news, you can deliver bad news in the right way. I've had the misfortune to restructure organisations, make people redundant, sack people for poor performance. It's never easy. You learn from everyone. But actually, if you talk to people openly and honestly, I think that helps.
Yeah, difficult, a multivariate role there, having to lay people off and furlough them. I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. And as you said, I think there was this great enthusiasm towards the end of the year that we could start this new year afresh. And obviously, it's great news about the vaccine, of course, but there's so many other challenges which are still present. And so I wanted to, I have a question about your sort of predictions, looking into a crystal ball about the future, certainly for 2021. But I think I'll ask that at the end, because I don't want to hog too much of your time here, Graham. And we have got a number of people taking part today live who've got some questions. So I'm going to bring in my colleague, Sarah Brooks, who's the co-host and co-producer of this show. Hello there, Sarah Brooks. Tell us questions for Graham Ash, who's our guest on the studio today.
Yeah, so I've got a question here from Elizabeth, who observed that you flunked your A-levels. You held your hands up there, Graham. Do you think that helped or hindered your success?
It didn't hinder, because, as I said, I was absolutely devastated at the time. The story is I hit an economics tutor who took an immense dislike to me. Made my life a misery, so flunked in as much as I walked out. But as I said, my parents said, you can go and do that, providing you get a real job. I was very fortunate. I joined the John Lewis Management Training Scheme, and I was allowed to go on a day release as part of that. And that was my launch pad, I guess. So I don't feel, by not perhaps being labelled or have a label of academic, that it's ever held me back. I've never been asked to prove my qualifications in an interview or a job at any stage. I'm not suggesting anyone sort of is creative, but it is a. I think you can look at it 2 ways. There's academica, which allows you to go, I know exactly the route I want to go down, and that's going to develop a career. And there's other people who have a level of academic study, don't really know what they want to do. I have my favorite example is I hired a lady when I worked at Adams Kids to come and head up my strategy team, who had a degree in brewing. And she came out, did that degree, and went, I really don't know what I want to do. And she had all of the right thought processes and skill sets. So sometimes the aptitude and the attitude of the individual helps. But I don't think Jamie's very kindly talked about, the role I had in Clarkson. That for me was probably been the pinnacle of my career. And not having A levels never ever held me back.
Brilliant. That's great to hear that. And Peter asked, if you were to advise your younger self, what would you do differently?
There is one big regret I have in my career, and it is slightly younger. It's going back into the late 90s. I worked for what was then British Shoe, with the brands of Saxon, Freeman Hardy and Willis, etc., etc. The business was owned by Sears. Sears was put British Shoe up for sale. It was bought by Philip Green, of Philip Green Notoria. And I discovered afterwards that the corporate firm who'd been brought in to sell the business really wanted to sell it as a management buyout. The executive team at British Shoe were trying to buy the whole thing, which is multi-fascias. I worked in Shoe Express, and had I gone to the administrator and said I had some level of interest in the business, I would have found that I could have bought that business for £1, and I would have had the backing of 2 of our major suppliers, one out in the Far East and one which is the Pentland Group, who are around today. And I could have been running a business, and I wasn't experienced enough or knowledgeable enough to know that that was the route I could have gone down. So I look back at that and went, if only.
Yeah, that's another question for another day, isn't it? The if only. So on that theme of the high street there, you mentioned Saxon and Freeman Hardy and Willis. I remember them. Paul Harris asked, how do we relaunch the high street? How is that going to happen now? Is it dead?
No, I don't think it is dead. I think you've got 2 things that are going on, and the answer to the high street therefore is through 2 eyes. I think there's a local. I think through 2020 and into 2021, lots of people have shopped local, and have found out that actually there are really good local small enterprise businesses that have probably offer, and particularly in and around food, probably offer better quality than supermarkets. And I think that local will thrive. I think they will come together as communities and thrive as sort of community ways. And then I think bigger high streets, so shopping centres and city centres, need it. I think stores become different. They need to become theatres a little bit more than just stores. So if you look at it, from my view, if you look at a Topshop of the future, it becomes a store showing trends, development, fashion. It's got a coffee shop. You can go and sit in there and think about the days in there, about chilling out with your friends. And I think it's got the whole sort of click and collect enterprise. So I think the role changes, but I do think people still want to go and look and see. I have some views about certain products. I always use TVs as an example. You can do all the research around what it's got, the best price, who offers service packages. But what you really want to do is go and see what the picture looks like. And you can't do that unless you go into a store. So I think there are certain roles that will still be there. I think retailers went into space everywhere and they overspaced. I think online people will potentially go, unless they've got a bricks and mortar offer of some shape or form, they will struggle at some point in the future. And I think you're going to need a blend of both.
I've spotted a question, so I'm itching to ask, because I know we've only got a few minutes left.
Well, I want to ask. Go on, then you go and ask it.
I know we all like David Bowie, and obviously it was his. He's very much in the news media as an anniversary in the last week or 2. So I've never asked a question before from a viewer. So here we go. Mark White from LinkedIn says, on my first day of work, I met David Bowie. Or was it Bowie? Always debated that. Has Graham ever met notable celebrities that made an impression on him?
Yeah, I've met celebrities. So in my very early days, I worked for BHS. I started off in their head office, having left John Lewis, and I was the allocator on the toiletries department. And one of the businesses that I dealt with was Brute 33. And their celebrity endorsements were Henry Cooper and Kevin Keegan, who I had the pleasure of having dinner with on a number of occasions, and actually went to La Manga in Spain with Kevin Keegan, which was quite interesting because he thrashed everyone at tennis. And I guess, you know, I don't know whether this qualifies as a celebrity, but I joined the Burton Group when it was owned by Ralph Halpern. So he's got some celebrity status, but I'm not quite sure that he really wanted it. And he left a significant impression, because despite all of the things that you would have read about, you know, his perpetuance for rather attractive women, you know, he was a fantastic retailer that really looked after and rewarded people in the Burton Group. It was seen as the best place to go and groom people, grow people, develop people, and it was a phenomenal experience that, you know, set me up for the future.
Great. Okay, so we've got time for one more question if you got one, and then I'm going to jump back in and just ask Graham a little bit about his predictions for the future of business in general in the UK post-COVID. Over to you, Sarah. One more question if you got time, Graham.
It's just from Ian Porter. Just looking at young people, what do you think is the future, or what words of advice would you give to young people now, Graham, who are maybe studying at college? You know, they've obviously had things disrupted over the last year. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think do you know what? I think this disruption for some of those people has been really difficult. I have a student at home here who's had her degree disrupted, and you know, it's not the experience they signed up for. So, you know, it's that resilience and that adaptability comes out again. I think it's around, okay, you're in the situation you're in. How are you going to adapt? What is it you can do? And then I think there's that thinking about, you know, there will be some normality, sense of growth and things like that coming down the line. You know, it's thinking about where those opportunities might exist, being prepared for them, researching them, understanding, being slightly adaptable, which says, you know, you might have thought you were going to go into one particular type of industry, but actually this particular type of industry works reasonably well as well. And it opens doors. You know, there will be doors open. It might not be the door you thought. So hold on to that, learn as much as you can. I think work placements, I think understanding the roles that exist in different businesses. You know, we've been talking today about, you know, what's your ideal job title? Sometimes the job title, so I'm a merchandiser, I guess, by profession. But when you go merchandising, some people it means number crunching, some people it means strategy, some people it means dressing shop windows. So being really clear about, you know, which route you want to travel down, why and how where you might get that experience from. You know, I certainly, when interviewing sort of people at start off, qualifications is one measure, but people who come in and go, I know what the role's about, I know what the business is about, what I'm looking for is a career which develops in this sort of way. And if they can articulate those things, they represent a really credible candidate.
Echo as well. Nina Mailer says that she loves your job title and of shaper and developer. That
okay, really, thank you.
It's not, and she says that's what she does as well. And I'm sure a lot of people would say that. And it's not exactly a job title. It's something that is more nuanced than, you know, that absolute, you know, sort of.
Yeah, and you see things like, you know, HR's now seems to be called Chief People Officer. You see, you know, digital directors being called Chief Customer Officer. There are lots of roles. I think you know, they're understand what it's really about and think about what you bring to the party. And I use those words because when I left Clark's, I worked with an old HR director who was a colleague, and he said to me, "What are you going to do? How are you going to go about it?" And he said, "What is it you want?" And they're the two words that, out of all of the work we did together, came out and probably summarised every role that I've ever had in some shape or form. And it's about people, and it's about industry, and it's about business. It's not about one or the other.
Yeah, and just some other job titles here. Gideon likes the idea. He once saw a title of Director of Knowledge in a company he worked for, and he likes that, Director of Knowledge. Kerry says her favourite or her sought after title would be Head of Sales in Wales, and that is in fact probably what she does, according to her comment. Andrea says Publicity Maker. Kelly says she'd like to be retired.
Well, no, that's really interesting, because if you said ideally perfect world, I'd like to be deck chair stacker on a beach somewhere.
Would you?
Yeah. I could cope with being on a beach every day, taking money first thing in the morning, chilling out all day, and then stacking them up at the end of the day.
And where would that be? Where would that be, Graham?
I'd like to go. It's in a really nice beach I know in Portugal, or one in Greece, but the problem is they're not warm enough all year round. So I'd have to think about what I did in the winter. But yeah, somewhere like that.
Okay. Well, look, Graham, you are watching the Biz Live. You're taking part in the Biz Live. I know that because you're here and present with us. But if you're watching from YouTube or Facebook Live, or indeed taking part in this LinkedIn show, you are watching the Biz Live live on LinkedIn. It's not over yet. We've still got a few moments. See you in a few seconds' time. Okay, so Graham, thank you so much. It's time to say a fond farewell to Sarah. Thank you so much for co-hosting this week and bringing out those questions from our those who are taking part. And as a quick reminder, you can also take part in next week's show. We have an episode almost every Tuesday, depending on our workloads. It's sponsored also again by Professional Apprenticeships, and you can see a bit about it here. It's going to be at 11:30 a.m. GMT on Tuesday, the 2nd of February. And we're lucky enough to welcome another business leader. He is the managing director, of all things, of business at Barclays, or Barclays Business UK. So if you'd like to take part in that, I popped a link with a slight typo, I'm afraid, because I'm trying to operate the show as well. Sorry, Ina or Ian Wortman. You can click in that, and you may also see it when it goes live as well, 11:30, if you are following me or a subset of my LinkedIn connections. So that's the show next week. Sarah, look forward to seeing you soon. Any passing comments before you go?
I just really liked what Graham said about, these buzzwords of resilience, adapting and becoming relevant. We just need to keep geeing ourselves up with some key thoughts to keep us on track. And I thought it really stood out today.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Look forward to seeing you in a few minutes' time after the show. Sarah and I work together. Thank you so much.
Bye.
See you soon. Thank you again on behalf of everyone watching now and in the future, Sarah Brooks. Goodbye. So that's Sarah. It just leaves you and me. And Mark White says, I don't care what my job title might be, but it would have to be customer facing role. I know that's very important to you, Graham. And we've had some really good feedback today. So, of course, thank you to Graham Ash for taking part in today's live show. If you're watching on the restream, as far as we know, it's posted onto LinkedIn. That's where the majority of people view. We've had over nearly 3,500 views of our pilot episode back in early September time. So do continue to comment, because that will get seen by people on LinkedIn. And if you're watching on Facebook Live, or indeed using our legacy feature on the YouTube as well, then please also comment there as well, because it's up there for good. And Graham, another episode comes to an end. I wanted to end with just a final question, which is a little bit of crystal ball gazing about your view and your stance on post-COVID. One, we asked Michelle Michael MBE this last week. She's a leader, as you know, in hospitality, retail, tourism, that sort of thing, and a director of 13 companies. When would you think that things will return to some sense of normality? And I don't mean, social distancing be out the window, but some sort of Michelle Michael suggested Whitsun, which I kind of agreed with, early summer. What about you?
Yeah, I think I guess how broad we want to define normality. I think it might be slightly later. I think it's more likely to be the summer. And I think, and I think we'll see steps. I think there'll be small steps, and that's what might lead us up to that. And I think, I think normality will be very different. And I think people will make choices differently as a result of that. I think it's an interesting one. So, and this is a personal view. So I guess it's my crystal ball. I would desperately like to go on holiday. The thought of traveling at the moment abroad is like a no-no. So you go, okay, well, therefore my choice will be, what does a holiday in the UK look like? Now, you try booking up a holiday in the UK for the summer at the moment, it's nigh on impossible because everyone's got the same thought. So, your choices will be slightly different. I think we saw in the first lockdown, everyone went, well, I'm not going on holiday, so I'll spend the money on improving my home. We saw house prices rise. Will that carry on this year? Don't know. There are lots of nuances that come out of this. I just think we are the crystal ball's really murky because I just don't think we know where these triggers will be. I do think what you're going to have to do is work on the basis it is going to get better. There will be a new normality, but have a think about what does new normality look like for you in your business or you as an individual. How are you going to look and behave, and what becomes important? I think what's important has changed for a lot of people. We look at things in different ways, I think, now, and I don't know about people on here and people watching. In lockdown, I've taken the opportunity to review every utility provider, every bill, every outgoing that I've got. And you're looking for, what's a great deal, what's out there, and things like that. So people are doing that a lot more. So I think that rotation will see a lot more. So I think there will be a lot of activity. You've got to be the business that stands out in some way or other.
Sage advice, sage and wise advice, Graham. Well, on behalf of us all, thank you for giving your time again. I know that you're a member of the Evo network, so perhaps we'll see you in tomorrow's live event, not show, nearly said show. And thank you so much on behalf of us all, Graham. So if you are watching still, please do give us the little hand with a little heart coming out of it, the green hand, I think it is, with the hearts. Give us lots of hearts. Give lots of love to our leader today, our guest in the studio, Graham Ash, and we wish you the very best of British luck for everything that you're doing at Pneumatic with Henry and whatever exciting new things are coming your way, and also for the rest of the year as well. Thank you so much, Graham Ash. Goodbye, Graham. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much and appreciate the invitation. Cheers,
fella. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so that's it. Just to remind you, we are sponsored by Professional Apprenticeships. Thank you so much indeed to Karina and to Adam and to all the team there and their 12 other members of staff. Congratulations. I just wanted to share with you again that in terms of apprenticeships, they recruit and place high quality apprentices. Oh, my LinkedIn's going mad. Hopefully good messages. They recruit and place high quality apprentices in digital marketing, IT, business management and customer service. And one very important thing, that right now they are working with huge numbers of employers who are using government funded apprenticeships to train and retrain existing staff. So here's an opportunity. Listen up. The government fund 95% of the cost of upskilling your staff. So for example, the digital marketing course they're offering is £11,000 worth of training, but will cost the employer just £550. So that's 18 months of training and a nationally recognized qualification. So please do connect with our sponsors and connect with the principal. He's watching today. He's called Adam Rook. And we thank you very much indeed for sponsoring this show. And to all of you, and to Graham, our guest, thank you so much. Next week, Ian Workman, the Managing Director of Barclays Business here in the UK. We will see you there, 11:30 AM GMT, only on the Biz Live, accredited by LinkedIn. Thank you so much. Have a great week. We'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone. Bye.